Welcome back, and if you haven't watched part 1 of this video, I'm going to fucking cry uncontrollably, and it will make you very, very uncomfortable. Anyway, so we left off with... Now, after 9 minutes of sheer pant-pissing insanity, Hunter wakes up after a night of debauchery with the illegitimate father of all hangovers. Before I go on, I do want to emphasize just how much this song sounds like a suffocating brain fog. Nothing is murky or muddy at all, but the entire song has this slightly lethargic, haphazard feeling to it, as if every beat is like trying to move your arm that just fell asleep, and it kind of just like flops around for a bit until the blood comes back. Anyway, as Hunter slowly regains control of his fine motor skills, he begins to realize everything that happened last night, and very quickly launches into a full-on identity crisis. Hunter remembers what he was thinking last night about not having any morals, and starts to question who he really is. Seeing Miss Leading reminded him of who he used to be when he was with her, so innocent and upstanding, but now he's basically given all of that up in the name of self-service, like a gas station that's not located within the state of New Jersey. Hunter doesn't recognize who he is anymore, and when he gets out of bed, he just kind of wanders around the house in a haze, probably freaking out everyone he's living with in the process. He realizes how he effectively just left his actions up to fate, since he's just been doing whatever benefits him the most in any given moment, regardless of the consequences. As he does this, however, he abides by no moral code and basically loses any sense of meaning behind his entire existence. He feels trapped, and aside from the musical cues, we can assume that Hunter is depressed as well, due to his partaking in the hallmark of any truly depressed person, sleeping in until 2 p.m. Time moves in slow motion for him, although this line about moments turning to long Decembers could also be meant to symbolize the passage of weeks or months of Hunter doing the existential limbo. It's not really clear which, but regardless, he remains in or returns to this state until the next song. Hunter doesn't recognize himself anymore, and as he looks in the mirror, he just sees the mask he puts on. The phantom staring back at him is the sun, but it could also be his seemingly deceased past self. And then to put another emotional boulder on top of his brain plate, he can't tell anyone about this. Otherwise, he risks the secret getting out and his entire plan melting into the viscous fluid of suffocating failure. As Hunter wallows in the mental illness equivalent of IBS, his vegetative state is rudely interrupted by the most terrifying thing of all: his beloved fiancée. Okay, so this is where we're introduced to another bit of a metaphorical wrench in the gears of Hunter's plans. So the son didn't just have friends he left behind when he went off to war, he also had a girlfriend he left behind that Hunter now has to pretend to love. Hunter must have been avoiding her or somehow unaware of her existence, because upon finding him, she has a few choice words for him. This collection of words presumably includes you, asshole, bullshit, and horsing around. The fiancée basically says to herself, well, yeah, there's my fiancé, hung over like a new set of drapes, just like before. Jesus fucking Christ. Before basically saying that she's had enough and telling him to get up and get ready for church like the good Christian boy he is, even if Hunter has already converted to nihilistic atheism. As he sluggishly tries to pull himself together in his depressive stupor, the fiancée has a moment to herself, presumably breaking out a cigarette and or an 8 a.m. gin and tonic, and reminiscing on how she ended up with this train wreck just waiting to happen. My God. We get some more context as to the time frame of events in this album. It seems that Hunter did not immediately head back to the son's family after the war was done. Obviously, we know that he went to the lake first, but he must have spent so much time wandering around that the son's family straight up thought he was missing. At worst, they could have thought, that bitch is dead. Which, technically, that bitch is dead. But, like, Hunter replaced him, so, like, yes and no. Anyway, the fiancé feels like she was abandoned without warning. And then for him to just come back unannounced like this straight up calls his care about her into question. She's gonna try to look past it because she still obviously has feelings for the son, or who she thinks is the son, but still understandably rubs her in an incredibly indecent manner. But she's still left wondering if he ever cared about her, or if she was just some kind of trophy he could show off. 3 lines in his chorus are basically different ways of her saying, did he actually love me, or was he just using me this entire time? A joke about my ex here would be some fruit that's hanging so low it's underground, so instead I'm just gonna leave you with a joke that's just as bad, me and who. Okay, so the fiance kind of keeps going on about this through the second verse, chorus, and into the bridge, and for understandable reason. To be perfectly honest, the fiance, along with Miss Turi, is probably the most tragic character in the series because now she's just left to Hunter's bullshit completely out of the metaphorical blue. So she asks herself, am I really gonna marry someone who just up and abandoned me after everything he said to me before the war? Or should I give him another chance? What if he ends up manipulating me again anyway? And having this all set to one of the most upbeat, energetic songs on the album is such a beautiful juxtaposition to the lyrics, but I think it's also appropriate because it embodies her anxious indecision perfectly. Okay, enough about that because the fiance straight up reveals that it's been years since the war ended. Hunter was gone for a good long while. What Hunter was up to aside from visiting the lake is forever up to interpretation. And because of that, I'd like to offer up my interpretation, that Hunter was actually searching across France for Pierre, his smoking hot bisexual awakening, for years before having eaten too many snails and mediocre cheeses for one lifetime and deciding to go back to America. Anyway, by this point, the fiance has run out of burning tobacco and or pacifying fluids and walks up to the almost fully dressed up but still unabashedly fucked up Hunter. She tells him to look her in the eyes and tell her he loves her. But Hunter can't do it. He can't keep this lie to himself anymore, and manipulating someone in this way would be too much for him, even in his morals are for pussies mentality. So because of this, he comes clean to the fiance. She's obviously sad the son's dead, but she gets over it pretty quickly because, after all, she does kind of feel like he abandoned her to go shoot people an ocean away. But she also feels a bit bad for Hunter and has sympathy for his situation. Besides, he looks like the son, so he's pretty hot anyway. So she asks him, do you think we could just keep up the illusion that we're together? You know, for research purposes. Asking for a friend. Luckily, Hunter agrees. Unfortunately, he has very little time to appreciate the fact that he is no longer alone in all of this, because all these realizations have made them late for church, so they better get moving lest they break the third commandment and get condemned to hell for all eternity. The moment Hunter enters the church, he remembers he's not the only person he knows who's going to hell. As he walks up to the entrance, he sees the leader of the church greeting his parishioners with a smile that sticks like Vaseline. But you know where this is going, so I'm going to get right to it. This is the priest. Like that priest. The one who's also the pimp. The former employer of both mystery and misleading. Hunter knows that devilish demeanor anywhere, and out of fear the priest might recognize him, Hunter very chalantly pulls down his hat, pops his collar, and presumably dons his emergency set of fake glasses and mustache. He makes it past the priest's scrutinations and assumes his place in the pews next to his fiancée, probably sweating so hard that you think he just finished up a particularly vigorous session with one of the Dime's employees in the other room. Hunter is then blessed, pun intended, with the privilege of watching one of the priest's famous sermons. The rest of this song basically acts as a reintroduction to the priest and doesn't really give us much new information other than, wow, damn, this guy really does have a racket going on here. Again, he convinces his parish that he can absolve them of all of their sins. And yes, that includes adultery. Just put a dime in his hat on your way out, and he'll make sure a room is ready for you later tonight. Obviously, the priest isn't saying this outright during his sermon, but he's still hinting at it, and it's an open secret amongst the wealthier, more misogynistic male churchgoers that this is, indeed, also the dime. So basically, Hunter is forced to just sit and watch the priest suck his own dick for an hour. Also kind of unrelated, but one of the lines of this song is a reprise of the "Hey kid, get a job" line from Act 2, except now it's "Hey kid, get a god," and it never fails to put a really, really stupid smile on my face every time I hear it. All that said, the priest sees right through Hunter's disguise and recognizes him for who he is. Before he can go and say anything, however, he notices other people refer to Hunter as the son. Hunter presumably having unintentionally become surrounded by old family friends who are surprised to see that the son is not dead. So the priest immediately hatches an idea. He plays along. He goes up to Hunter before he leaves the church and basically says, "Hey, son, yeah, my old chum. Glad to see you back. Anyway, have you ever considered maybe, I don't know, getting into politics?" Now, obviously, any reasonable person would shoot themselves in the kneecaps before becoming a politician, but we know that Hunter is about as reasonable as a rabid moose. But in addition to this, the whole politician idea actually makes sense for Hunter to take up for a few extra reasons, and the priest plays right to these. First of all, it allows Hunter to go root out the corruption in the people who run the city. It will effectively allow him to take down the priest by exposing him in his racket. Hunter just needs to become powerful and influential enough first. Obviously, the priest doesn't say, hey, you should use it to completely screw me over, but he definitely implies it because he knows that Hunter will be unable to pass up that opportunity. Hunter's savior complex is too inflamed, so when the priest tells him to use your gifts for good and rescue them from greed, he jumps on it like he just enrolled in a gymnastics class. Second of all, by a cosmic stroke of convenience, the fiance's father is already a politician, and probably where she and Hunter got much of their financial support from. Not only could he vouch for Hunter, but he could also lend him the required expertise to begin a lengthy, respectable political career. Finally, Hunter is open to this idea because he has nothing else to do. Hey kid, get a job. And so, Hunter gets a job. With support from the fiance's father, the priest, and his own tragic war hero story, the strategy of unabashed nepotism works flawlessly. The gears start turning in this political machine and nothing can stop them. The more outspoken and passionate Hunter becomes, the more the public starts to like him. Finally, someone who's actually gonna do something they say they're gonna do, which he definitely is going to do this time. You know, because public officials are notorious for keeping their promises. In the bridge to this song, Hunter helps to explain some of his appeal. He had a tragic backstory where he learned what it really means to be alone. You know, the war and God abandoning him and all that. But because he knows how hard that is, he uses his platform to support causes that play to a similar sense of sympathy. You know, things that everyone can get behind, like 9/11 was bad type stances. But what makes Hunter unique is just how much he commits himself to the bit. He doesn't just go out of his way to support these causes, he gets behind them with such a vigor that he makes all of his contemporaries, even those who agree with him, look like complete posers. For once, Hunter's emotions actually benefit him, and managed to not leave his pants in a state of complete besoilment. Anyway, Hunter never thought he would get this far. He gave it a shot until they run out of money and he's forced to move on, but his success has given him a new purpose in life. Now he's gonna stay grinding these gears until every one of his enemies is crushed. That mostly referring to the priest and possibly the nation of France. Anyway, he knows that the road ahead of him is lined with potholes, barbed wire, landmines, mob henchmen with guns, and at least one unabashed truth nuke we'll get to later, but Hunter's hubris has returned with a vengeance that makes John Wick look like a naked mole rat. While Hunter has never really desired fame or untold levels of power, suit yourself, he's about to have it all anyway, and you don't hear him complaining. He keeps encouraging himself by saying, yeah, this is gonna suck ass, but it's all gonna be worth it just so I can watch the priest grovel and cling to my shins. Now before we move on, this song has a weird ass title. Let's ignore the reversed part for now because it'll just confuse us, and no, Casey did not pull a Joe Hawley and decide to play the entire song in reverse. It is, indeed, a normal theater kid type beat song. Anyway, the King of Swords is a reference to the tarot card of the same name. As someone who has absolutely no knowledge of tarot aside from the fact that, yeah, Justice and the High Priestess do kind of make sense, unfortunately. Upon researching for this video, a task which amounts to Googling King of Swords tarot meaning and reading lyric transcriptions and or the WordPress blog for this entire series exclusively, I learned that the King of Swords symbolizes kind of what you'd expect. It represents righteousness and confident but reasonable actions, often paired with a very high ethical stance. Now this sounds like Hunter a bit, sure, even with his questionable personal morality. But then you remember that this song also contains a little clarifier. This card is reversed. In tarot, pulling a card normally corresponds to the positive qualities that it represents, but pulling a reversed card corresponds to all of the potential negatives of that card. That said, a reversed King of Swords is often used to represent a tyrant or a complete and utter loose cannon. And now that sounds exactly like someone we both know. And also Hunter, I guess. This song kind of continues the dancey, relatively upbeat nature of the last song, just with some more synths this time. This song, however, is meant to represent Hunter's victory. That motherfucker did it. Despite everything working against him, and by everything, I mean comparatively little when put up against his father-in-law, the priest, and Hunter's armed claymore of an emotional state, victory is in his grubby little reach. Still in a bit of shock that he's made it this far, he particularly starts to question himself again. Was this really a good idea, knowing where arrogance and ambition has gotten him in the past? Sure, it's all redefined him as a person, but also has left him in a progressively worse position every time. He's trying not to do the same thing again, knowing his limits, but still pushing the envelope as far as humanly possible. But now that he's about to win the election, he's got to get ready to put his plan into action. The moment he gets in there, he's going to give every corrupt motherfucker one final chance to come clean, and if they don't, Hunter will hit them with the roundhouse kick to the face that is bureaucrat reprimanding. And if they fight back or try to fuck Hunter up in exchange for the swamp drainage, Hunter will fuck them up even harder. And obviously, as the King of Swords metaphor predicted, Hunter is becoming ruthless. And he admits that his level of ruth is becoming concerningly low, so he reassures himself that, yes, his motives are good as long as he offers others the chance to redeem themselves. And simultaneously, he'll bathe in the glory when everyone who's ever wronged him before or during this campaign inevitably comes to him to beg for mercy. He can't wait to see the look on the priest's face. During the outro to this song, which is absolutely transcendent, we get a few words from the local proletariat Hunter has just spent months kissing the asses of. He's finally helped them feel seen and cared for, ironically something that Hunter has somehow been completely unable to do for literally everyone else in his life, at least since Mystery. Anyway, the huddled masses ask if Hunter will lead them to paradise if they put their trust in him, and they ask him to continue to kiss their asses in spite of what we'll do to you. Yes, that 4 is getting shadowed the fuck up right now. This might be the most peaceful and amicable breakup song I've ever heard. Although, to be fair, that's not a very high bar since most breakup songs I know are prone to at least one instance of Fry screaming or double kick drumming. Except maybe No Distance Left to Run by Blur, but I don't think that one's as peaceful as the line because it's just a bit more, for lack of a better term, desolate. If No Distance Left to Run is the "it's so fucking over" of breakup songs, the line is the "it is what it is." It's incredibly out of character for Hunter, as his usual reaction to breakups usually result in Casey Crescenzo refusing to play it live. But this begs the eternal question: who the hell is breaking up? No matter what, one of the parties here is Hunter. That's about as deniable as the fact that ICE is collecting facial recognition data on peaceful protesters. The other person, however, could be interpreted as either Hunter's past self or, more predictably, the fiancé. We do know that this is sung from Hunter's perspective directly, meaning that these first few lines are referring to how Hunter is no longer going to let himself feel heartbroken for these inevitable breakups. It might be hard to actually bring himself to let go of his optimistic, naive past self, but he knows he can't let that hold him back from achieving his goals right now. As for the fiancé, spending this much time with someone will typically cause you to get attached to them. But again, Hunter feels like he can't let her hold him back. But how exactly is she holding him back? In the chorus, Hunter says, "It's the end of the line," no shit, but then, "don't make believe we ever tried." Remember back at the very end of The Squeaky Wheel where the fiancé asks Hunter, could we give it, as in the fabricated relationship, a try? Well, Hunter said yes, but he never truly loved her. He barely knew her, and trying to force attraction over time, even as it refuses to naturally arise, is, to put it bluntly, not effective. I know how that works all too well, and it makes me want to eat my fucking pants because if I was just into men, this whole life thing would be so much fucking easier. Point is, Hunter barely tried to make it work, and really just kind of gave up on the idea of it from the start. He only stayed with her for convenience and access to the support of his father-in-law. Besides, he doesn't need a broken engagement to be the subject of every politically opposing newspaper in town right now. First 2 could also be referring to either Hunter's past self or the fiancé. Hunter's character arc over time has reflected what these lines say, even down to the little clipped your wings nugget calling back to that Icarus metaphor I spent way too long talking about in the Act 2 video. Misleading then led him astray, quite literally by pulling him into the dime, and the war left him completely dead inside like the only good song off of that one Muse album. And then the winter, his return to the city, has left him cold, seemingly free from the influence of his past self. The fire's out. As for the fiancé, this could just be referring to how her time with Hunter has increasingly made her disillusioned with their relationship as well. Then the bridge of the song is basically just Hunter saying, look, this is totally for the best and we can finally be better off without each other, very similar to what my parents said when they divorced. But like with my parents' divorce, there's a complicating factor. And that complicating factor happens to be the one and only wrench that can fuck up literally any plan ever devised. The presence of a child. We're not going to fully learn this until the next album, but I'm going to say it now to explain why exactly Hunter and the fiancé continue their facade of a relationship even after this song. Apparently, they must have had some very passionless sex on at least one occasion that resulted in any reasonable person's worst nightmare. Point is, they will end up deciding to stay together for the sake of their offspring. You know, I think Blink-182 may have made a song about this. This is another one of those songs that's basically about the title. Actually, now that I think about it, that goes for pretty much every song on this album, and I'm not sure how it didn't occur to me until just now. Anyway, wait is referring to wait as in an exclamation of surprise and individual processment, as opposed to wait as in needing to allocate more time before something happens. That probably doesn't make any sense, so I'm just going to move on and pretend none of this ever happened. This song witnesses Hunter basically being hit with a bunch of realizations at once, and it's another one of those songs that's really vague lyrically. That said, hear me out. For the love of God, this makes sense. Hunter basically has a religious crisis again, and also goes to bang misleading, which in turn causes an even bigger religious crisis. Wait, what? Exactly. Hunter, having teamed up with the priest and therefore being exposed to Catholicism even more than ever because of it, starts to get a little existential. He looks back on his life again, thinking about his actions and saying, wait, my actions? They have consequences. Basically, you know how babies don't have object permanence, right? Like, once an object disappears from sight, the baby just thinks it dematerialized out of existence. But as they grow up, as most of us probably know, they eventually learn that just because they can't see something doesn't mean it's no longer existent. Hunter just had his object permanence moment, but with emotions and relationships. Basically, oh fuck, I hurt misleading. No wonder she was acting so weird when I saw her during my night on the town. Hunter realizes how he overreacted in the past and basically was an abusive asshole, and he feels horrible for it. Now here's where the whole Christian thing ties into this. Hunter feels like he has sinned for hurting misleading so much, and makes him think about how he could possibly make up for his actions. Since Catholicism is basically all about how you fucked up from birth and need to compensate for it, it kind of goes hand in hand with Hunter's insecurities. Is there something keeping track of all his bullshittery? And if so, how can he be absolved? Hunter's drive for redemption is going to get much stronger as time goes on, but it is the first time it's going to show up at the front of his mind. It's not just that he wants to make things better, like he's been for most of his life, but Hunter wants to erase the negative effects of his past too. Hunter may have sworn off the idea of God before, but now, having spent months in church and with the priest to keep up his appearance, he wonders, what if I'm wrong? Especially after having just been granted so much power. Maybe this was God's reward for Hunter after making it through so much tragedy? But that's doubtful. Hunter's still convinced that he'll be going to hell if he doesn't try to amend his actions, and so he's afraid that if heaven, and therefore God, really do exist, he's completely boned. Now, speaking of things getting boned, so it's not said explicitly outright in the lyrics, but Hunter does go back to misleading. After the second verse reiterates his doubts in God, he still questions those doubts in chorus 2. And then we hit the bridge. I want to give it up, but I just need it too much. He wants to give up this nagging feeling that he needs to atone for his sins, but he can't. He needs to make it right. He needs closure too much. So he goes and apologizes to Misleading, and she hears him out. In the time since he left, Misleading didn't completely lose feelings for him because he's presumably still the only person who's made her feel genuinely loved. They're still into each other. And Hunter, having no feelings for his fiancée, on top of having about as much control over his emotions as a coked-up chinchilla, decides that he's tired of having incredibly dull sex all the time. And so is Misleading, so they get back together and also probably fucked. At the end of this song, Hunter reiterates his fears that if God exists, he's metaphorically fucked as well. But now it's especially bad. So some more Catholic lore for you. There are 10 commandments, right? Again, like the Catholic equivalent of bondage. Or I guess bondage is the Catholic equivalent of bondage, but okay. Anyway, point is the 6th commandment says not to cheat on your partner. Banging your ex after deciding to stay with your fiance and getting her knocked up is, as far as I can tell, probably a massive violation of Commandment 6. Okay, we don't actually know for sure if they banged or whatever, but knowing Hunter, they probably did. Again, self-control like me in front of a bag of baby carrots. The final track to this album leaves us with yet another realization on Hunter's part, somehow one even more physically revolting to Hunter than the existential crisis of weight. Like I've said countless times by now, in the Dear Hunter, things always can and will get so much worse. You probably saw this one coming by this point though, because now that Hunter has succeeded in his selfless quest to amass and consolidate absolute power in his hands by becoming mayor of the city, the priest talks to Hunter alone in the church one day. "I bet you thought that you would succeed, pulling the wool right over me. Hard to believe this snake stayed in the grass just long enough to catch a rabbit's feet. Hunter, once again, is completely fucked." The priest knows the truth, and it was his plan all along to help Hunter become so bureaucratically powerful so that at the end he could revel in Hunter's groveling. He knew Hunter's secret from the very beginning when they were reunited back in the Bittersweet Part 6. And then, as if that's not enough, he starts to rub it the fuck in. I bet that you could breathe a satisfied sigh of relief. A terrible thing it must be, forgetting where you came from or having trouble when you fall asleep. Not only did Hunter give up all of his past self in order to assume the identity of the son, a massive sacrifice even if it was an easy-ish choice for him originally, but also, Hunter has effectively squandered his entire second chance at life. It's all gone to waste now because as much as he's tried to escape it, his true self will always be part of him, and he can never fully 100% erase it. Hunter can't change the past as much as he wants to. And then the priest basically says, "You're no better than me. You lie constantly to literally everyone you meet. And now for the shell. Sell yourself. As long as I'm protected, your secret's safe with me." The priest has almost as much reputational blackmail on Hunter as anyone who's watched any of my videos has on me. Hunter, in his patented, emotionally unpredictable manner, does what we all predicted and starts crying like a pussy little bitch boy. And that's why I relate to this series. So Hunter falls to his knees all dramatically and goes, "I never wanted all of this. I just wanted to get back at you." Which, yes, I'm sure the ego boost of becoming a successful politician felt nice for a bit. Hunter's entire motivation for it was to do good and right his past actions, and maybe also just a little bit of revenge in the process, like as a treat. At the very end of this song, the priest nonchalantly exits to let Hunter self-flagellate in peace. Hunter thinks of how he lost his soul here, in the home of the great deceiver, whether he's referring to the priest or God himself again. He remembers how the oracles warned him back in Act 2 and Act 3 and even earlier on this album to not fly too close to the sun. But that's what he did. And when he crashed, he didn't even get very far. And now he's truly stuck. He can't fake his death again, and there are too many people counting on him. But now he has to do the priest spitting at the same time. It's complete psychological torture, and it is fucking delectable. Hunter didn't just crash land, but the moment he got back on his feet, he fell into a sinkhole. Earth opened up and swallowed him whole, just like was foreshadowed back in the lake and the river from Act 2. Hunter realizes how stupid he's been this whole time, and regrets having ever left the lake. And we are once again ending an album with Hunter at a new low. And I know what you're wondering. Yes, that is a Weezer CD up there. It's amazing. This album takes everything about this series and flips it on its head for the third fucking time. It's like breakdancing, except slightly less likely to make you cry. Hunter started out as some broke kid questioning his sexuality after coming back from his European adventure, became a complete bed-rotting vegetable, and turned into his generation's equivalent of Gavin Newsom all over the course of those 70 minutes. Well, in the universe, it's more like a few years, but you get the point. In the past few years, you know what happened to me? I went from a ginger who's so gay, all my also gay friends made fun of me for it, to a ginger who's so gay, all of my also gay friends make fun of me for it, except they call me she now. Again, we're left with a cliffhanger that makes you just want to take a sledgehammer to your kitchen table. Or at least that's what my mom did when I played this album on our little speaker as I was cooking dinner one night. But as we all know by now, things will only be getting worse. We haven't even gotten to the opium addiction yet. or the serial organized murder, or meeting the priest's boss, or hearing guest lead vocals for the first time in one of the songs, or the return of Pierre's sexy French ass. Only one of those was a lie, by the way, but good luck finding out which one. And before I mercifully leave you to your own devices, every song in this album is either the most hype fucking thing I've ever heard or complete depression fuel. Regardless, it'll have you in a complete fugue state by the end of it. The full-ass orchestra Casey hired to record this album and the next adds so much that I never even knew I needed in this series. If you thought Act 2 and 3 were instrumentally dense, Act 4 is a goddamn symphony. And I'm not even exaggerating much because Casey later went to re-record a ton of the album's orchestral parts as a full-ass symphony. Holy fucking hell, this album makes my mind feel like the goddamn Hindenburg. Which is weird because that was still another 15 years after this album takes place, but like the whole flame and hydrogen gas and 1/3 of the life contained in it dying horribly, yeah, that's my brain right now. I never thought an album with so few breakdowns could melt my face like this, but I wouldn't have it any other way. Probably. Actually, maybe a metalcore breakdown at the end of Ouroboros would have been pretty badass, but nothing's perfect, I guess. 9 out of 10. This shit makes Act 3 look like Act 1. Or makes Red Hands look like 1878. It makes really big things look really small, okay? Thanks for letting me waste your time. If you want to hear how I waste my time, stream my music.